Hey guys, good afternoon and welcome to a new unit where remember we're on level number 15 and this is going to be unit 10, okay? So in this unit you're going to learn to refer to time in the past, number one, and number two, making predictions in the future, okay? So for this lesson number one, we're going to talk a little bit in general terms about both of these objectives, right? Refer to time in the past and making predictions in the future. So let's begin. So we have here keywords to describe a point in the past, right? So we have these keywords that we use when talking about things or facts or history in the past, right? As you can see, we have 3, 4, 5 examples. We have number one, during, number two, in, number three, ago, number four, from, to, and number five, for. So all of them refer to time, okay? We're all talking about time in the past. So, because we're talking about the time in the past, we're going to be using information from the past. And here I've got some information about historical information. And the first one, just to give an example of using the word during, we're going to talk about paper. Okay? So, paper was invented during the 2nd century. Okay? Paper was invented during the 2nd century. All right. We have in. So, in this case, democracy was developed in ancient Greece in the 6th century. So here we put second, and democracy in this case, it was developed in ancient Greece in the 6th century BC. Okay. We have ago. For example, Neil Armstrong took the first steps on the moon almost 50 years ago. Okay. So almost 50 years ago, Neil Armstrong took the first steps on the moon, right? So a lot of people say it's fake, right? It's a lot of theories, but we're not going to get into that in this video. But anyway, ago, right? 50 years ago. So from the present to the past, 50 years ago. We also have from to. Yes? For example, World War II. World War II occurred from 1939 to 1945. World War II occurred from 1939 to 1945. And the final one, for example, the Roman Empire lasted for over 1,000 years. So that's a long time that the Roman Empire was in power. Okay, and then we use for. In this case, for 1,000 years. The Roman Empire lasted for over 1,000 years. That's a lot of time. Okay. Very good. So remember, keywords during, in, ago, from, to, and for. Right? We refer to a point in the past, the 2nd century, 6th century BC, 50 years ago, from 1939 to 1945, and 1,000 years, for over 1,000 years. We also have keywords to describe a period in the past that continues in the present. So for example, we have since and we have for, and actually in previous units you talked about and we discussed the present perfect, and we use the combinations with since and for. So keywords to describe a period in the past that continues in the present. So this is important, that continues in the present. As you can see in the previous one, we talked about things that are not occurring right now in the present, they occur in the past, right? Like paper, invented, the invention, or democracy, again, development of democracy, or the first steps on the moon, or World War II. Obviously, we don't have World War II in the present, right? Obviously not. Hopefully not World War III, but I mean, obviously not. I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. And in this case, we have things that, yes, they originated in the past, but they continue to this day. And we use since and for, right? We have United Nations, which is something that was from a long time back, but in this case, in the present, the United Nations still exists. So I could say since. The United Nations has existed since 1945. Or the United Nations has existed for over 70 years, right? Right now we're talking about 2019, and well, since 1945, that's over 70 years, okay? So, again, it's important that it continues in the present because we're going to use the present perfect, has or have, and the past participle, existed, okay? And so it's important. The United Nations has existed since 1945, or the United Nations has existed for over 70 years. Anyway, let's continue to the next topic, which was, remember, this one was referring to time in the past, and the other one was making predictions for the future. So we are, right here. How do we predict the future? Or, well, we're not like, we don't have superpowers, but when you're discussing a topic that has to do with the future, well, you have different ways to express your prediction of the future, right? You don't know what's going to happen. That's what the future is. You might have an idea, but you don't know exactly. So what do? Well, you predict. In this case, we use will. In other units, remember, we use going to for more typical or general actions. We're like, I'm going to the movies tonight. So probably that's going to be your plan, and probably you will do it. Maybe there's a small chance that it gets canceled because something happens, but usually it's a little bit more short term. But when we talk about will, then we tend to focus more on opinions regarding the future. It has to do a little bit more with predictions. But anyway, we can use will to predict the future. Okay? In this case, I'm going to use will with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will become a danger for society. Okay? I don't know. This is just an example, but maybe it is, maybe it will not. Okay? Artificial intelligence will become a danger for society. Okay, what do you think? We use will. We can also use the future continuous to predict the future. What is the future continuous? Well, remember, it's will with be, a form of to be, in this case be, and the action, in this case, circulating. Okay, circulating, ing. So, self-driving cars will be circulating the streets and highways for the next century. What do you think? Do you think that's true or false? I don't know. What's your prediction? Okay, so in this case, the topic is self-driving cars. And I'm using the future continuous because it is something that is happening, right? It's in progress. So will be circulating, right? So imagine the little cars circulating, driving around the highways and the streets. So, self-driving cars will be circulating streets and highways for the next century. Okay? Future continuous. Finally, we can use the future perfect. So similar to the present perfect, future perfect has the auxiliary have and the past participle. Obviously, well, you need to use will. So, within 50 years, scientists will have discovered the cure for cancer. So, will have discovered. Within 50 years, scientists will have discovered the cure for cancer. Okay? So again, in this case, what I mean by will have discovered is that within 50 years, so imagine in the future, in 50 years, by that time, in what 2075, 2069. That's going to be a reality, maybe, right? That they will have discovered by that time. They will have discovered that cure for cancer. Okay, so what do you think? Do you think that could be a possibility, or maybe earlier? I don't know. Okay. Anyway, that's going to be the end of this lesson. For the next one, we're going to be talking about history. But remember, just to review, we talked about keywords to describe a point in the past with during, in, ago, from, to, or for. And during, remember, and we all refer to time: 2nd century, 6th century BC, 50 years ago, from 1939 to 1945, for over 1,000 years. We also talked about the present perfect and using since and for because they continue in the present, such as the United Nations. The United Nations has existed since 1945, or the United Nations has existed for over 70 years. We talked about will to predict the future, future continuous to predict the future, and future perfect to predict the future. Okay, so have a nice day and see you for the next lesson.